Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to my evening news report right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. Sununu calls for bipartisanship, unveils college tuition program in inaugural address. Republican governor tries to reach across aisles to Democratic legislative majorities. Republican Governor Chris Sununu called for bipartisanship with the Democratic legislative majorities, while also warning in his second inaugural address Thursday that he will not tolerate increased taxes or a change to the state's Medicaid expansion work requirement. Sununu is the first Republican New Hampshire governor in modern history to have a legislature controlled by Democrats. The governor offered a plan olive branch to a legislature that flipped in the November election from a Republican majority to a Democratic majority. Democrats now control the House 223 to 167, and they control the Senate 14 to 10. While strong majorities, neither are vote proof, meaning that Sununu will still wield substantial power over the state's agenda. Promise new free tuition program, moving psychiatric unit from prison. Sununu unveiled a new education program to provide some students with free tuition for a college associate degree. He called for a study into the causes of the state's high rate of pediatric cancer. He praised the new hub and spoke model of addressing the state's opioid crisis. He promised to close the secure psychiatric unit at the state prison this year, and he called for continued overhaul of the state's mental health system, nothing that a new 10-year mental health plan will soon be released. Sununu called for reform of the state's foster care system and promised to raise awareness and address the state's high rate of youth suicide. He said that while he and the legislature increased public education funding by 50 million in the past 2 years, I fully expect this legislature will have a rigorous and thorough discussion regarding for funding for education. At the same time, however, Sununu made it clear that despite the failure last year of his education savings accounts or voucher program to pass the Republican controlled legislature, he will continue to push for ways to expand a student's access to educational choices. The governor said his New Hampshire Career Academics program, developed with the help of State Commissioner of Education Frank Edelbolt, will use community college system funds to provide students with an option of taking fifth year of high school that will enable them to receive a high school diploma or a certified and an associate degree, free of cost to the student. Under the program, the participating students will also be granted an interview with a New Hampshire company for a Granite State-based job. Sununu said the initiative will not cost taxpayers or the education system an additional money, but makes a free college degree available to New Hampshire students. A spokesman for Sununu said after the speech that the tuition program will not be subjected to legislative approval and requires only approval of the State Board of Education. Sununu called for funding common ground on the all-important state budget for fiscal 2020 and 2021. That new spending plan will take effect on July 1st. Sununu defended the new work requirement of the state's Medicaid expansion plan and called on lawmakers to keep that requirement intact. He also said business tax cuts enhanced in recent years and slated for enhancement in the months and years ahead have been a boom to the state's economy. But Sununu said that later this year he will propose spending $24 million, the state's single largest ever investment in workforce training, to grow our state's nursing and health care workforce and double the number of those graduates in New Hampshire schools. Did Sununu sound more like Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who has worked for 4 years with a Democratic-controlled legislature, or President Donald Trump? Policy issues not mentioned by the governor may be devised in the coming months. Democrats are expected to try to repeal a bill allowing for constitutional or concealed carry, which was the first piece of legislation signed into law by Sununu when he took office 2 years ago. They are also planning to try to repeal 2 measures backed by Sununu and the Republican in the past 2 years to tighten voting restrictions. Senate Bill 3, passed in 2017, requires voters to provide more detailed documentations providing they are allowed in the state if they registered within 30 days of an election. This law requiring voters to provide more documentation if they registered within 30 days of an election is being challenged in court. The other, which requires that anyone who votes in the state to be a resident of the state, takes effect July 1st. Senate Democrats said a news conference Wednesday that they hope to work with Sununu on paid family and medical leave bill that they say focus on public-private partnership, but they also are calling for a new state minimum wage for the elimination of the next round of business tax cuts currently slated to take effect in 2021. On Thursday, state Democratic leader joined Shelfer in intercepting Sununu's speech as a mixed message. Senate President Donna Saucy, Democrat of Manchester, said the governor tried to strike on toward of bipartisanship. I think he certainly wants to look at a number of issues that we do as well, such as reducing energy costs, ensuring that education is properly funded. But she added, there are some details that he mentioned today that are a bit troublesome. He's still talking about diverting state taxpayer dollars to private institutions. That's non-starter within our caucus, and I think the legislature. We all believe in greater education opportunity, but the devil will be in the details, and I believe we will have some differences there, Saucy said. Saucy said the work requirement approved on the bipartisan basis by lawmakers last year was made more on assurance by the Trump administration when it granted a waiver for the Medicaid expansion program. Senate Majority Leader Dan had a sharper rebuke. The Concord Democrat said Sununu has shown his inability to stand up to the Trump administration to protect New Hampshire's health care security. Whether it's Trump administration messing with our bipartisan Medicaid bill, whether it's failure to stand up to the Trump administration in protecting granite staters with pre-existing conditions, whether it's continuing to pursue and diverse public tax dollars or private prep schools and private education, he is pursuing an extreme agenda, he said. Senate Majority Leader Dan also noted that while Sununu said during in his re-election campaign that he had a compromise plan in works for paid family and medical leave, no plan was issued today. Senate Democrats, he said, have a plan. We've given the governor what we wanted, a public-private partnership, and I'm hoping that the governor will get behind it. Senate Majority Leader Dan said that if the governor's free tuition program is in fact pushed through the rules process rather than through the budget or other legislature, that will be a problem. We'll have to see the details on how he wants to proceed. Observantly, we're going to oppose any division of tax dollars to private prep schools and religious schools, which continue to be the focus of Governor Sununu. Senate Deputy Minority Leader Jeb Bradley of Republican of Loughborough said he was pleased that Sununu made it clear that he will not support and repeal of the business tax cuts signed into law last year. Bradley saw no change in Sununu's approach in dealing with lawmakers now that the Democrats are in the majority. Speaker Shelfer showed an open mind to the governor's proposal to provide students with an optional fifth year of high school in order to obtain a college associate degree free of cost. Don't burn bridges. Sununu also talked about his approach to dealing with the Trump administration. He said that while some states pay lobbyists to go to Washington, I believe that no one can advocate for a start like the personal relationship a governor can bring to the table. So I fly down from time to time and sit with secretaries or the administration or the president himself when necessary. He said that personal conversations with members of Trump's cabinet resulted in action to address a crisis at the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Manchester and to ward off a threat of oil drilling off the New Hampshire coast. He said a personal conversation with Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos resulted in funding to keep vocational rehabilitation funds coming into the state when an end to the program seemed possible. And Sununu said, when we had a new idea that needed significant funding for the opiate crisis, I was able to hand the detailed plan to the president and his team and advocate for what would become the single biggest increase in opiate funding in the country right here in New Hampshire. The list goes on, but I share these examples with you as a reminder that relationships matter in public service. Don't burn bridges. You'll be surprised how many times you have to cross the same river. And that does it for my evening news report right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great evening, everyone. And I'll see you back here tomorrow with more news reports. Goodbye, everyone.